Losing a soulmate is a heartbreak I wouldn't wish on anyone, not even those I least admire. My name is Amy, and the sadness of losing my husband came just 3 years after our wedding vows. Our life together was blissful. I had left my job because I had a high-risk pregnancy and was eager to welcome our baby girl. However, destiny had cruel plans. My husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he bravely fought for 4 months before passing away. During his illness, we moved in with my in-laws, Carol and William. They supported us as best as they could. I was grateful they provided us shelter when we couldn't afford our own place anymore. After my husband died, I hoped for continued emotional support from them, but I was sadly mistaken. The warmth they once showed turned cold right after the funeral. Carol and William started treating me and my unborn child as burdens. I told them I planned to find a job and help financially, but they didn't care. Money wasn't a problem since my sister-in-law Angela, who had a good job, was covering all the expenses. Still, my in-laws remained distant, saying I wasn't welcome and didn't deserve their help. William bluntly told me that to them, my connection with their family ended with their son's death. Desperate, I begged them to let me stay a few more days, especially because of my risky pregnancy. My father-in-law shockingly suggested abortion as a solution, and Carol didn't object. Their hostility reached a peak when they tricked me into going to an abortion clinic, pretending it was a health checkup. Realizing what was happening, I protested and left. Returning to their house was difficult, but I realized I needed to find a new path for myself and my unborn daughter, away from the toxic environment my in-laws had created. Overwhelmed with grief and shock, I was devastated by their insistence on terminating my pregnancy. When they returned, they were furious and demanded I get an abortion. They said they had no intention of supporting me or my unborn child now that their son was gone. I tried to remind them that the baby was their grandchild, but they ignored me. Their ultimatum was harsh: either leave or get an abortion. The reality of their rejection hit me hard, especially so soon after my husband's death. Carol forcefully escorted me out, ignoring my protests and the danger it posed to my pregnancy. Outnumbered and worried for my baby's safety, I had no choice but to leave. Standing on their porch, I was in despair, realizing I had nowhere to go and no financial support. I reminded them of the sacrifices I had made, believing we were family, but they didn't care. They denied any family connection to me or the baby, saying they didn't want a granddaughter and accused me of trying to manipulate them with the baby's existence. Their cruel words suggested that without their support, our survival didn't matter to them. These were among the last heartless words they said before shutting the door, leaving me isolated without even basic necessities or important documents. In that moment, I faced the harsh reality of their complete rejection and indifference towards me and their grandchild. Sitting on the porch, enveloped in despair, I felt utterly shattered and powerless. After crying uncontrollably for about 30 minutes, Carol and William confronted me again, demanding to know why I was still there and insisting I leave their property immediately. They threatened to call the police if I didn't leave, which was the final push I needed to understand they were serious. Fearful for my safety and that of my unborn child, and knowing I had no legal standing since my name wasn't on the lease, I gathered my strength and began to walk away, tears streaming down my face. I walked a few blocks, feeling lost and overwhelmed. I decided to call Angela, holding on to a sliver of hope that she might offer me some support. As soon as she answered, my emotions, amplified by pregnancy hormones, burst forth uncontrollably. Somehow, through my sobs, I managed to tell her where I was but couldn't say much more. Angela, alarmed by my distress, quickly came to pick me up. Angela's home became a safe haven for me. She gently comforted me, reminding me to try and control my tears for the baby's sake. She didn't ask for details, but focused on helping me feel better, even preparing food and a smoothie to calm me down. Once I was somewhat calmer, Angela, with a serious tone, urged me to tell her what had happened. Her assurance of support, no matter what, was comforting to me. I hesitated, knowing that her parents were involved in my problems might change things between us. Angela, something significant happened. It's about your parents, I managed to say, bracing for her reaction. Angela's response was a moment of silence, a pause that felt like an eternity as she processed what I said. Her promise to support me, especially knowing I carried her niece, was strong. But the news that her parents were at the heart of my despair tested that promise. As I hesitantly revealed her parents' involvement in my troubles, I feared Angela might be upset with me for accusing them. But her reaction, after a brief pause, was one of concern and openness. She assured me in a gentle tone that my fears of offending her were unfounded and encouraged me to share my ordeal. When I confessed that her parents had not only kicked me out, but also tried to force me into having an abortion, her shock was clear. The revelation seemed almost unbelievable to her, a stark contrast to the image she had of her family. Angela's confusion deepened as I detailed how her parents had even taken me to a clinic to try and make me have an abortion. This plan was stopped only by the understanding staff at the clinic. I could see the turmoil of shock and disbelief in her eyes as she processed my words, struggling to reconcile them with the parents she knew. Her disbelief turned to horror as I explained their motive: fear of financial and caregiving responsibilities for me and my child. Despite my assurances of independence and my plans to find work, they remained unmoved. Angela's astonishment grew as I disclosed the financial deceit over my husband's supposed medical bills, a lie that stripped me of the last of my resources. Angela was adamant that no such debts existed. She had personally taken care of her brother's expenses to ensure her parents weren't financially burdened. Realizing that her parents had tricked me into giving up the little money left by my late husband hit me hard, bringing back my tears. It was a cruel lesson in their greed and callousness, exploiting my vulnerability for their gain. Angela's silence showed her shock and dismay at her parents' actions that betrayed not just me, but the memory of their son. After giving me space to express my grief, Angela's response was full of empathy and apology. Although she struggled to grasp the full extent of their betrayal, her support at that moment was a small light in the overwhelming darkness of my situation. I said to her, "I haven't had the chance to tell you about the financial aspect of things, Angela," to which she replied, "Please, you don't need to apologize." I told Angela, overwhelmed by her generosity, "You've already done so much by covering the medical expenses. Without your help, I would have been buried in debt." Angela's actions were the perfect example of family support, a stark contrast to her parents' selfishness. She admitted that she always knew her parents prioritized their own desires, but never imagined they would go so far as to deny me a temporary home until I could support myself. Angela's disbelief turned into determination as she insisted that I wasn't alone and promised that her parents' actions wouldn't go unchallenged. She decided to confront them directly over the phone because she needed to hear their justification firsthand. Not because she doubted my story, but because she wanted to understand their reasoning. During the call, Angela's straightforward questioning about why they threw me out revealed their true nature. Their defense was weak. They claimed they had no intention of causing harm, yet they couldn't explain why they insisted on such a drastic action against their grandchild. Angela's anger was clear as she demanded an explanation. Her parents' attempts to justify their actions only deepened the wound. Listening to them try to rationalize what they did was heartbreaking. Even when faced with their daughter's outrage, William and Carol stuck to their excuses, insisting on their right to a carefree retirement undisturbed by the needs of their late son's family. They claimed they had done enough by caring for their son in his final months, viewing their sacrifices as sufficient reason to avoid any further responsibility. Their words painted a clear picture. In their eyes, their comfort in retirement was more important than the needs of their grandchild and me. This chilling revelation underscored their willingness to abandon their family for the sake of their own ease, a stance that Angela strongly opposed. Her loyalty and support offered a glimmer of hope amidst the bleakness of their rejection. Hearing Carol and William's words was like a blow to my already fragile state. They were adamant about persuading Angela to abandon me, portraying me as a burden who would exploit her kindness. Their harsh advice to Angela, to leave me to fend for myself on the streets, suggesting it would bring me to my senses, was unbelievably cruel. Their words plunged me into despair, fearing for my future and that of my unborn child. But just as I felt the weight of hopelessness, Angela's response ignited a spark of hope. She challenged her parents with fierce protectiveness, questioning their humanity and the values they claimed to uphold. Angela reminded them of the financial support she had provided, which allowed them to retire comfortably, highlighting the irony in their claim of hard work. Her anger showed her disbelief in their actions and intentions. Carol and William tried to justify their stance by framing it as a financial safeguard for Angela, even suggesting they'd lie to cover up their demand to kick me out. Angela met this with unwavering refusal. She declared she would not mimic their heartlessness, expressing her shock and disgust at their lack of empathy and familial duty. Angela's defense of me and her outright rejection of her parents' manipulative tactics revealed her strong character and the genuine bond she felt with me, akin to that of a sister. Her fierce response to their demands and her readiness to stand against them showed her strength and resolve to protect what she believed was right, regardless of the personal cost. Her parents' attempts to impose their will were met with Angela's firm refusal to conform to their heartless demands, challenging their motives and ethics. Angela's stance not only defended me, but also upheld the memory of her brother, reflecting her deep love for him and respect for the family ties her parents were so quick to dismiss. Her courage and integrity in the face of such family adversity were a beacon of hope in what felt like an endless night. Angela's bold declaration that she would cease her financial support was a significant turning point, leaving William and Carol shocked. They had never anticipated that Angela would take such a drastic step in my defense. Even I was surprised by Angela's determination to stand up for me so firmly. William and Carol were in disbelief, unable to grasp the reality that Angela was serious about redirecting her support from them to me and my unborn child. Their reaction to Angela's stance was a mixture of confusion and denial, questioning if she really intended to cut them off financially over what they dismissively called a stupid woman. Angela's resolve was unshakable. She corrected them, emphasizing my importance and her commitment to support me and her future niece instead of funding the comfortable lifestyle of her parents, who were more than capable of managing on their own. Her declaration marked an end to their exploitation of her generosity, signaling a new priority: my well-being and that of my baby. This stance by Angela left William and Carol scrambling, their earlier confidence dissolving into panic as they faced the real possibility of having to fend for themselves financially. They attempted to backtrack quickly from their initial demand for my departure to a sudden willingness to welcome me back, which was a clear sign of their desperation. They even went so far as to retract their insistence on abortion, suggesting a newfound readiness to figure things out. Angela then passed the decision to me, her smile signaling a power shift. It was my moment to address the situation, to highlight their wrongful actions and seek accountability. Calmly, I voiced my doubts about their sincerity, pointing out their egregious behavior and the lack of a genuine apology. Confronted with this, William and Carol hastily offered their apologies, a stark contrast to their previous stance. They expressed regret for their actions and extended an invitation for me to return, promising to make amends. This sudden change of heart was a testament to Angela's influence and the realization that their financial stability was at stake. The situation underscored the power of standing united against unfairness and manipulation, shifting the dynamics in a way that demanded respect and acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Struggling with mixed feelings, I confronted William and Carol about the deceitful way they had manipulated me out of my late husband's money, despite Angela covering all the bills. Their scheme had unraveled, revealing their dishonesty and exploitation at a time when I was most vulnerable. Seizing the moment, I demanded the return of the money they had unjustly taken, emphasizing that they had no right to it given their lack of support during my husband's illness. Reluctantly and likely feeling cornered, William and Carol quickly refunded the money through PayPal. Then, they reached out to Angela, suggesting a return to normalcy, as if a financial repayment could erase their wrongdoings. They even proposed setting up a nursery, attempting to lure me back with promises and pretenses of family unity. However, their assumption that a simple apology and refund would mend fences was misplaced. Their expectation of forgiveness, despite their initial willingness to disown me and my unborn child, was a testament to their entitlement. They seemed to believe these gestures were sufficient for reconciliation, overlooking the depth of the hurt they had caused. Firmly, I rejected their notion of family and forgiveness. Their actions, particularly their attempt to coerce me into an abortion, were unforgivable. The audacity to suggest that my daughter would want them in her life after they had so clearly rejected her was appalling. I made it clear that my child did not need such grandparents, emphasizing that their initial rejection and subsequent superficial apologies could not undo the harm they had inflicted. Angela stood by me, reiterating my lack of forgiveness and reaffirming her decision to withdraw her financial support from them. This decision was not taken lightly, but was a direct consequence of their actions and their failure to truly acknowledge the gravity of their wrongdoing. William and Carol's reaction to this finality was one of desperation. Their pleas for us to reconsider, driven by the sudden reality of facing financial responsibilities without Angela's support, were pitiful. Their earlier confidence evaporated, leaving them to reckon with the consequences of their actions, a fitting end to their manipulative attempts to control and discard us according to their whims. Watching William and Carol face the consequences of their actions was both tough and satisfying. They tried to make us feel guilty, but it didn't work. Angela decided enough was enough. She was going to collect my things and then cut ties with them. She even said she'd bring the police to make sure they couldn't keep any of my stuff. True to her word, Angela arrived with a police officer who turned out to be her boyfriend, a surprise to us all. Despite their pleas, I had moved on and blocked them. Angela didn't stop there. She told her whole extended family about what had happened. They were appalled by William and Carol's behavior and rallied around me instead. In the time leading up to my daughter's birth, I was wrapped in a cocoon of love and support. I landed a job through a friend, set to start once daycare was sorted for my little one. For now, I'm staying with Angela, who's been encouraging me to save up for a house to secure our future. Her boyfriend has been an incredible support system. I managed to get a restraining order against William and Carol, thanks to statements from the abortion clinic, ensuring they stayed away from my child and me. My baby girl is healthy and blessed with her father's dark eyes. Seeing them for the first time brought tears to my eyes, and Angela has been my rock through this, choosing to sever ties with her parents permanently. Life took a turn for William and Carol. They've downsized to a small apartment and had to return to work because of financial strain. It seems karma has come full circle, placing them in the very situation they wished upon me.